thank you so much. I can't believe you are having me back. After the number of black dick jokes I told last year. Sorry, madam. My eyesight sucks, which is the second reason, after how lovely they look, that I'm always in sunglasses. But I'm pretty sure I saw at least 3 of the more geriatric among you being carted out to ambulances after my last speech. But I am back, so thank you very much for having me. Somebody's left 2017's best publication out for me. It's wonderful. Proving, by the way, the old adage that you can't judge a book by its cover is entirely wrong. It's lovely. Right, let's get down to it. It's a lovely jacket, but very awkward pockets. I should really rehearse this stuff, you know. The sorts of people who give speeches for a living really should practice. Right, well, thank you so much for having me back. I do appreciate it. Despite everything, I intend today to be marginally more respectable than I was the last time. Don't groan. Because I am now a New York Times best-selling author since the last time I saw you. Thank you. And my publicist has said that I should stop saying cunt so often in public. So here we go. Last year, I thanked David for giving me the Annie Taylor Award for Courage in Journalism, which was lovely, because I like receiving things for which I have not worked and which I do not deserve. I have that in common with Democrat voters. In the year since I last spoke to you, I have been proven right many times over. My central insight that the best way to fight the left is with laughter and war has been proven many times over. And you've heard from some of your other speakers this weekend about the power of ridicule. No matter how many arrows they hurl at you, no matter how much damage they attempt to do to you, if you stand and if you laugh and if you keep fighting, they cannot win and they cannot beat you. I am not only still standing, I am standing in $4,000 ruby-encrusted Louboutin slippers, which some of you saw at dinner last night when they were so lovely I had to wear them twice, and also because I had this joke written about them. That's not to say that it isn't difficult. It can sometimes be draining, taking the slings and arrows for the rest of you. For instance, some of you last year met John, a 6'2" black guy. We just got married in Hawaii. Thank you. And it was in what I like to refer to as a fully Antifa-funded ceremony. Those idiots heat my pool. Love them. I'd be nowhere without the haters. But a toll is taken on your private life when you choose a life of war. For instance, bedtimes with my African-American husband have become fraught since BuzzFeed exposed me as a white supremacist. It was just the look on his face. He Googles me almost as often as I do. And just for the new pictures, you know. And I knew what was coming, because I knew the story was coming, this silly thing that they published. And he looked over at me. And that was the end of it. Right, so I'd be nothing without my haters, the banshee howls of overweight feminist losers. They heat my pool. But some things do not change, even after 12 long months. Last year, when I came to Restoration Weekend, feminists and liberals were screaming and crying, and I was stunningly handsome. A year later, liberals are still screaming and crying, louder if anything, and defying the laws of physics, biology, and fairness. I am even more handsome than I was last year. And you thought Monica was good at congratulating herself. But I love her, that wasn't a read. some things do change. Thanks to BuzzFeed, I have been crowned the world's leading gay, Jewish, disabled immigrant with a black husband who's also a sexist, a racist, a homophobe, a transphobe, an Islamophobe, and a neo-Nazi. Well, I'm here to tell you, only Islamophobe is true. And maybe transphobe, but aren't we all really? Throughout 2017, the Queen of England called the Diana diet her Annus Horribilis, not to be confused with Anus Horribilis, which is a Latin expression meaning Maxine Waters from behind. It could have. That joke could have been so much worse, couldn't it? You see, I've been tamed. The liberal media have ignored everything that conservatives have said this year in favor of what they wanted us to say, or they hoped that we would be saying. For instance, they tried to say I was anti-Semitic. Actually, what I said was that Jews, including my mother's son, have above average representation in many areas of public life because we're above average in intelligence and hard work. Some of us especially so. Rather than hating Jews, perhaps Richard Spencer and his band of tiki torch tossers should be looking at us for tips. The only thing I truly hate about Jews, and there is one thing, is that so many of us vote Democrat. They said that I was advocating for a white ethno-state. I had to look up what ethno-state meant. Are you kidding? My dating pool would evaporate overnight. I'd have to move to the Congo. I have tried the best I can to explain to my audiences that reason and religion are the keys to explaining why the West is the best, not race. The blindness on the part of liberals and their contempt for America and the Western world in general may explain why they hate Israel so much, why they like Palestinian Muslims so much, and why they so loathe college speakers like me, David, and Ann Coulter. Deliberately muddying the waters between Western supremacism and white supremacism is a trick of the media that has ramped up in the last year, and some of us have fallen foul of this strategy. I'm pleased to report it has not worked, and it will not work. Because the left's attempt to brand everything they don't like racist and sexist, reaching this hysterical fever pitch with it's a sort of moral panic, isn't it? You know, this neo-Nazi white supremacist thing. It's like acid rain, or climate change, or satanic ritual abuse. The media reports on it because it really wishes that it existed, when in reality perhaps 2,000 losers spread across a country of hundreds of millions of people get press coverage they don't deserve because the media wants to suggest that everybody in this room and everybody that voted for the president is some kind of dark, underground racist, that we all harbor dark thoughts. Well, we don't. And no amount of telling us that we do is going to produce them. Perhaps another reason the left hates Israelis and Jews quite so much is because we tell such good jokes. And laughter is the supreme enemy of social justice nannies. The one thing authoritarians hate more than anything else is the sound of rippling laughter in halls like this. And glamour, aspiration, hard work, independence, and all the other wonderful things that make this country great. But mostly, laughter. Because I, more than I think anyone else in American culture, and you'll forgive me for setting aside my usual self-effacing shyness, the shrinking wallflower I have been presenting to you thus far, this afternoon, this morning, I've been up a long time. Forgive me for setting that aside for a moment. I'd like to set out a new theory of history which divides America into BM and PM, before Milo and post-Milo. Before Milo, feminists held court on college campuses, and most importantly, they were feared. They were intimidating and bullying anyone who dared to defy their conspiratorial rantings. Post-Milo, however, feminists are considered a joke. They're more commonly characterized cruelly and meanly by people like me as lazy, ugly, single crypto dykes stinking of cat piss, living in hideous apartments in Brooklyn with friends they hate, jobs that will never satisfy them, dreaming of a day when they could cast aside the feminist shackles around their necks and get a husband and some children and be happy. In other words, the jig is up. I don't just treasure the Annie Taylor Award, which I will mention several times in this speech, because it is the only time anyone has ever been stupid enough to award me for anything. Because it represents an unearned honorific, which is always pleasing, but also because it's really, really shiny. And it now occupies pride of place in my Miami home, behind a box of Clorox wipes in my second downstairs bathroom. And if you don't know what Clorox wipes are, ask your maids. Most of what I love in life falls into the category of glitter. But living on a bus and in hotels on my college tours is far from glamorous, but I did it for you and for America, and it seems to have worked. But I do always keep David's award close, because it reminds me not only of how wonderful I am, but also of David Horowitz's judicious insight and perspicacity. It's customary at this point in any Milo speech for me to start bragging. No, I haven't yet. That was just the introduction. We have now sailed past 150,000 copies of this book sold, which is muted applause, because I know, I didn't take it personally, because I know that you get to hear from luminaries at Restoration Weekend every year. But this book, after being dumped by Simon & Schuster, received no mainstream media interviews and no mainstream media reviews. It is a publishing sensation, thanks not only to my wordsmithery and fine chiseled features, but most importantly, to the vibrancy and commitment and loyalty of young conservatives in America. Conservatives under 40, the conservatives that nobody else manages to speak to very effectively. And it is for them that I did the book, and they seem to love it, which I'm happy about. The power of a generation of young conservatives who don't care what the media says is limitless. And if they devote themselves to figureheads who similarly do not care about lies printed about them by activists masquerading as journalists, the sky is the limit. I was just told by my manager a few days ago that, sometimes when I'm bored, I'll just go on tour because, I'm sort of getting like antsy at home. So I just, I'll just go to Australia, whatever. And then these things suddenly spiral out into being really successful. I've just told that we've sold 10,000 tickets in Australia. I barely know where Australia is. I'm kidding. But this is an example of the sort of numbers that are possible when you appeal to young conservatives who, like those of us who are on the front lines, don't care about lies the media tells. Forge ahead, ship product, and be successful. If the media didn't make you, they can't break you. And it's a cliche, but it is perfectly true. So I made my own publishing house. I created my own publishing house to publish this, and so far I've published me and somebody that I have looked up to for years, Pamela Geller, her new book, Fatwa. Most conservatives will sell between 8,000 and 9,000 copies over the complete lifetime of their books. On day one, we shipped 20,000 copies of Fatwa. This is a huge success by any metric. And for a first-time publishing house, it's really great. So Dangerous is delivering. We're publishing as close to the speed of the internet as we can, which in publishing terms is 8 weeks. We're doing this because our audience, who are decades younger than the majority of readers and listeners of most conservative products, demand things at that speed. Conservatives are going to continue to lose, however, unless they not only do all of that, but address what young people actually care about, which in many cases is not politics, or at least not directly politics, it is culture. And I became well known in America writing for Breitbart.com, and the late Andrew Breitbart, who sadly I never met, his of course well-known edict that politics is downstream from culture is the most true and the most valuable observation ever made in American politics. And conservatives too often, I think, say the right things but don't back the right horses. They will clap along with remarks like that, but when it comes time to pick who they support, pick the easy option or pick the uncontroversial choice, with the result that 2 generations in this country have been lost. 2 generations have been lost. The entire millennial generation is gone to you. Everyone my age is lost. Younger generation is up for grabs. My fans start at 13 years old, unprecedented and unparalleled by any other American conservative, or probably any other conservative anywhere in the world. It's where I focus my energies, because Republicans thus far have said the right things but done nothing. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what your tax policy is if you lose on abortion. It doesn't matter what your trade deal policy is if you welcome Islam into the United States. It doesn't matter about the vagaries of particular percentages and even foreign entanglements don't matter if you drive the races and the sexes apart with progressivism. So I encourage you to make more dangerous aspirations for yourselves. People, the combined power of this room is remarkable, is extraordinary. And the people in this room tend to use that power pretty well. But encourage your friends who don't, because there are plenty of people with resources and means, connections, and all sorts of other things elsewhere in the conservative movement in America who are backing the wrong horses. So go out and advocate for the dangerous option, the mischievous option, the option that is winning in culture. Now, if you ever had a toddler get upset about a cookie, not getting a cookie, you'll understand how the liberal mind works. It's sort of like a 14-year-old, which is incidentally around the age that women are when liberals molest them. No wonder the left loves Islam so much. Too much? Too much? No. Fuck you! Several. But I'm just kidding. No, not kidding. The land of the First Amendment that enables you to make crass, silly jokes is in crisis, and conservatives have allowed it to become a place wholly alien to my conception of America when I moved here. I came here and I thought, this is awesome. Like, Britain is so restrictive, and I got fired, I think, 5 times from the Daily Telegraph because they kept using me to sort of do the controversial headlines, and then when people were outraged about them, they're like, oh, we'll have to let him go. And then I came back like 3 weeks later. I realized this was not the place for me. But I came to America and I thought, this is great. This is a land of freedom. I can be, do, and say anything. Well, conservatives are at risk of losing that legacy. You see, what happens is venues will book conservative speakers, and then there'll be protests. The left will bring out their violent threats, and in some cases their violence, and venues will collapse sobbing in a heap, like a 13-year-old in Kevin Spacey's dressing room. This is a fearsome theater in which to fight, but it is beyond the realms of politics, deep into culture, fighting feminists, Black Lives Matter activists, professors, liberal journalists, and other kingpins of the progressive universe. As you will have gathered by now, I hate to brag. But allow me to share with you, how happy I am that despite the slings and arrows sent my way and the way of so many other people on the front lines in the movement that you've heard from, Steve Bannon, the endless decades-long cruelty inflicted on Ann Coulter, Pamela Geller, and of course David himself. But we're experiencing something of a renaissance. We're experiencing a renewed sense of purpose and of energy, which has expressed itself in the current presidency. It's very exciting. You have an opportunity now. There's a window now, when I thought perhaps that one wasn't coming again. There's a window now to save things. And I hope that you'll allow us to get it done. Every support network you will discover when you fight on the front lines falls away from you when the going gets tough. Every support network fell away from me recently. Almost every ally, with the exception of David Horowitz, fell away. Now, I don't mean to sound like a victim, because that's literally the thing I fucking hate most in the world. And I'm not one. I have a wonderful life. I have millions of fans globally who hang on my every word for some reason. But it does, I don't say this to make you feel sorry for me, because you really, really should not. But think about how many people are deterred from entering the field of battle, who don't have the broken brain I have, who don't have the courage of a Coulter or the resilience of a Horowitz. Think about how many people are chased out of the field of battle by name-calling, by attempts to destroy their reputations, by BuzzFeed. David Horowitz knows who these people are. He knows how they fight. He knows that they don't play by our rules. It's like, it reminds me, I came to America and I sort of was like, oh, it's going to be great. I heard about this Tea Party thing. Conservatives are like really excited and robust and really like to have a go. And discovered, actually, that the world of conservatism in America is quite different. The world of conservatism in America, at least at the establishment level, is better represented by National Review. If there are any donors to National Review in the room, please leave. You can flagellate yourself on the way out for our amusement. Now, I started my fight in education because it seemed to me that there was a bubbling cauldron of young conservatives who were more willing to stand up and be counted and take some flack than their parents and their grandparents. And certainly that's been true. Last year, I was given a lovely introduction, which I really didn't deserve and was very touched by Tom Sakota and Ariana Rollins, two of the country's leading young Republican activists. These kids are truly tremendous. They are spectacularly brave. To give you an example, some of you may have heard of Berkeley Free Speech Week. UC Berkeley threw everything they had at us. And it was important for me to show up anyway. It was important for me to be on that campus no matter what. But they threw everything they had at us. And the final straw, and the thing that really collapsed the original program that we had planned, was that they threatened to open a hate crimes investigation against their own students for posters that supported free speech. That's UC Berkeley. UC Berkeley, by the way, paid for by you. Hundreds of millions of dollars a year go into their research budget. This is federal money. Your federal taxes go straight to UC Berkeley. There's a simple solution to all this. There's a simple but brutal solution to so many of these things, and it is stop funding higher education entirely. Just cut it off. The president tweeted after my previous aborted attempt to speak at UC Berkeley, it will happen one day, I promise. No federal funds, ? For organizations that do not meet their First Amendment commitments. Well, I hope that Congress and this administration will look into withdrawing federal funding from any college that does not ensure political diversity in its faculty. Students, thank you. Students these days are not taught to challenge themselves, not taught that the purpose of university education is to expose yourselves to opinions that you might find awkward or uncomfortable, that the purpose of university is to hurl yourself into dangerous ideas. Instead, they're taught that university is a sort of therapy club, a home from home, somewhere you can, and this has happened many times when I have been speaking, recline on luxurious goose-down pillows, watching videos of puppies frolicking playfully in the long grass, alongside the dulcet tones of Alanis Morissette. Well, across campus, the most vile indignity, the horror of a gay man with the wrong opinions is happening on your own campus. It's appalling to these students, but they must be re-educated. They have to be shown what university is for. In a climate of punch and Nazi, and we can all sympathize, I think. We all saw that video of Richard Spencer and quietly chortled to ourselves, because who wouldn't? It's a reasonable response. But in a climate of punch and Nazi, where we are all called Nazis, where the left has broken down the barrier between thought and action, between words and violence, to justify its own violent responses to our ideas, something has gone horribly wrong, and conservatives are called upon now to fix it. Because the attitudes taken on many campuses around this great land, conservatives are not physically safe. Now, I upset people for a living, which may come as a surprise to you. So I accept what comes with that. I'm a provocateur and I accept the consequences of that. But Charles Murray, the most unobjectionable, inoffensive man who published a very reasonable and even-handed book that was overgenerous with its conclusions, if anything, and David Horowitz, an erudite, learned and accomplished man. These two men cannot set foot on college campuses without armed guards. It all came to a head in Berkeley, as you know. I will be returning to Berkeley, hopefully in April or May. I would like to make it as disruptive as possible for them. That's definitely going to happen. Oh, and by the way, now the dust has settled, I can tell you that that cost Berkeley at least $1 million. Wonderful. Let's bleed the fuckers dry. So if you are thinking about supporting any conservative who wants to go speak on college campuses, whether it is somebody from Turning Point or any of these young student organizations, encourage them to make as much of a fuss as possible until universities realize that it has been really, really expensive to create, nurture, and encourage a culture of leftist violence against conservatives on campus. And the people responsible for footing the security bill are not us, it's you, university administrators and faculty. You have to pay. The people in this room should support those speakers if they possibly can. Universities have to be hit in the only place they actually care about, their pocketbooks. And so, although I didn't intend originally for this to be the case, I take some pleasure in the vast amount of money that UC Berkeley has had to spend and will have to spend every year for the remainder of my existence, policing my presence on that campus. My goal is to I have a lab at home where I'm breeding mini Milos because there's not enough of me to go around, let's be honest. And I want 12 of us so that we can sort of have a rotating cycle of college talks. So there's always a Milo at Berkeley. And every month they're spending $1 million to keep, by any means necessary in Black Lives Matter and Antifa from smashing up the town. I'll let you know how the science experiment goes. I might be a disreputable fag. But I love the Bible, and I love guns almost as much. I believe that abortion is murder in all cases. I believe that it is morally abhorrent and ought to be illegal. I want low taxes and a strong military. I think feminist man-hating is ridiculous and hurts women the most. I believe that the nation-state is the best organizing principle for human civilization. In order for our movement to succeed, in order for your movement and your children's futures to be assured, Republicans have to learn to stick together like the left does. Stop throwing each other under the bus and stop going quiet when other people are faced with little PR hiccups. You may not love everything about that British cocksucker who creates problems on campuses. Chances are, though, that 90% of what you've heard about him aren't true, but that is beside the point, because every time you fail to stand up for Gavin McInnes or Donald Trump or Steve Bannon or, yes, me, you're inviting the left to move closer to you. They're closing in on you. The walls are coming in, and every time conservatives don't stick up for each other, they get a little closer to taking stuff you care about. The culture war is not lost in the fine details of tax policy. It is lost when conservatives stop sticking together. The progressive left will not stop until there's no conservative speech left. They start by saying, I'm not acceptable, David Horowitz is not acceptable, Anne is not acceptable. The establishment conservative reflex, the gag reflex, is to give up on that fight and find more appropriate speakers. This is a new strategy, by the way, by college professors. They'll say, oh, well, of course we believe in free speech, but we should have people who deserve to speak on college campuses. Well, I think that students paying $60,000 a year to be indoctrinated into Marxism can choose for themselves who is worthy to speak on campus, and not you. And we must look at their own actions to determine what they believe is appropriate for a campus. And what do we discover? We discover that conservative student organizations are inviting a range of speakers, from well-respected authors to provocateurs. But universities themselves, official invitations from universities, are going out to people who support terrorism, to Marxists. Universities are rewarding people who hate this country and want to see it burn. CUNY in New York gave its commencement address to Linda Sarsour. I was very happy to stand on a rainy day in the back of a pickup truck with Pamela Geller and point out that Sarsour is Arabic for cockroach. And I am happy to pay her commencement address in goats anytime. When you hear someone saying that a speaker is gauche or low rent or crude or not worthy of speaking on a college campus, you're being played. You're being manipulated. In the era of Trump, where even conservatives seem to have accepted the premise that the president's words fall outside the bounds of political discourse, we must insist on one course correction. It is not us. It is not we who must change. It is the definition of appropriateness. It is political correctness. It is the establishment. It is the media's speech norms that must change. We will not change. We will not stop telling jokes. We will not modify our language. We will not avoid subjects that make people feel uncomfortable. We will not stop doing anything. They have to stop. Political correctness is not another word for etiquette. It's not another way of saying, can't you just be nice? Can't you just, not make those jokes? Can't you just not say that about people? Do you have to be so mean? That's not what political correctness is. Political correctness is not an appeal for civilized, polite discourse. Political correctness is a tool of political weaponry. Speech codes, language policing, appropriateness. They call it tone policing on the left. All of these things are not designed to create happy, productive atmospheres for debate. They're designed to make conservatism illegal. Can I answer it? Bring it up. Worst crime is that fucking awful ringtone. What was that? Jazz. Ooh. Insofar as every major television network, including Fox News, perpetuates a system of political correctness and appropriateness, they all deserve to burn. The left systematically hobbles conservatism by branding its most effective warriors as violators of imaginary social norms. These norms are invented and enforced by the left, and collaborators on the Republican side allow them to do it. And they are invented not in the service of justice, but in the service of control. Let's consider, shall we, one of the social norms that the left wants to impose upon us. Hollywood. Almost every day, it's so delicious, I almost can't help but lick my lips. Almost every day, new allegations come out about producers, directors, and other odious Hollywood types committing awful offenses against men, women, and even children. And there's a lot more to come on that subject. It's a bit like news out of Europe, but with fewer explosions, honor killings, and acid in the face, you know? George Takei. This is why I don't always tell people I'm gay. What? When people meet me, they don't know, you know. George Takei, that spindly old bastard who once played something on a sci-fi show, a harsh critic of both Trump and me, is now being charged with taking advantage of teenagers and underage boys. Well, I've decided to take a feminist-approved listen and believe approach to every allegation of sexual assault made against a leftist. We've been told for decades that listening to and believing the stories of women is the most important thing that we can do to help stop sexual assault. All right then. Fine. We'll do it. Now, the left has been trying to undo the principle of due process for decades. And while we must, of course, maintain our high-minded principle, can't help but enjoy it a little bit, right? It's wonderful. It's spectacular to see them hoist by their own petards. The left has been destroying conservatives on the basis of mere allegations for decades, which is why you should not feel in the slightest bit guilty about sitting back and laughing heartily at the Götterdämmerung currently taking hold of Hollywood. Speaking of ruined reputations, Kevin Spacey. Now, I haven't always had the best of relationships with the gay lobby. Is that you? Is that you? Who was that? What? It's in the... yeah, sure it is. I'm going to have you all wanded. That was a sex joke. I have to telegraph it, you know, given the age of the audience. I'm sorry. My eyesight's really bad, and when I walked into this hotel, you know, they've got those big glass jars, like by the check-in desk. I thought that they were like drip bags, so that so you could wander in and get a little top-up if you weren't sure if you'd make it to your room, you know? Oh, shut up. Kevin Spacey. Let's get back to a subject we can all agree on. I haven't always had the best of relationships with other gay people. In fact, I hate them, and I'm quite homophobic because of how other gays are. They really are dreadful. But one thing that I'm glad to see that they were sound on, a subject on which they were sound on, was Kevin Spacey's shallow attempt to cloak himself in gay privilege after being accused of raping a child. It's disgusting. Motherfucker. It's 3 for 3. And it's all this side. This side's perfect. They're a model of perfect. Give yourselves a round of applause for being a model of audience behavior. You fuckers can leave. See, I grew up being taken to the theatre and the opera, and my grandmother, who instilled in me a love of Wagner, which has never left me, used to hit me quite hard on the back of the head for coughing at any point in the 2-hour act. So I have developed an appreciation for respectful audiences. All right. No, honestly, I'm just grateful anyone listens to me. No, I do agree with the gay lobby. This is disgusting. And this is the perfect example. This is why identity politics is so poisonous. This is why we have to beat it. Because what Kevin Spacey's response to the allegations demonstrated is that the left is trying to establish different rules. E pluribus unum is being undermined by identity politics. What they're attempting to do is suggest that punching me should be more of a crime than punching this nice man here. Now, most of us in this room can agree that the vast majority of people would much rather punch me. They'd be right. But just because I could turn around and say he did it because I'm gay, and therefore the sentence might be longer because it's a hate crime, is an appalling abuse of justice. And it's an American failing that, you spent so long teaching the rest of us how to successfully navigate freedom and democracy and capitalism, stuff that we gave you first but you perfected. You're now inheriting our worst impulses, socialized healthcare and speech codes, the two things guaranteed to fuck conservatives forever. And you're inheriting this stuff. And this hate crime legislation, making it more of a crime to hit somebody based on an entirely subjective offense definition. It's like, oh, he did it because I'm gay. You should arrest him for something he tweeted because it really hurt my feelings. This isn't just a recipe for abuse, it is an open invitation to conduct political warfare with the law. That's what it's there for. That's why they did it. That's why it runs the show in Europe. That's why they have these laws in Europe, so that people can pretend that conservatives hurt their feelings. All right, off to jail with you? I'm not kidding. This is not a joke. In Scotland, the police tweet, "Don't be offensive on the internet because we're watching." In, I think, Nottingham, in England, the police warned against being misogynistic on the internet because it is an offense and you could be arrested. That's why I don't go back to England. I'm illegal in my own home country. But this is what the American left has been doing. It's been creating these speech codes and creating separate forms of justice for imaginary victimhood, for perceived victimhood groups, who in many cases, by the way, are doing just fine. I am gay. I have been very drunk, but it has never made me want to touch children. Kevin Spacey can go fuck himself. That explanation is unacceptable. And attempting to create a parallel system of justice for himself just because he happens to like men is disgusting. And it violates everything on which this country was founded. The story in Hollywood is still unfolding, but regardless of the twists and turns, and whoever is accused rightly or wrongly, this ongoing Hollywood apocalypse represents a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for us. Hollywood leftists have been exposed as the hypocrites we always knew they were. They say they support women. They say they're male feminists. Anyone who describes themselves as a male feminist, you can start the clock on the rape charge. Always happens. They say they support women while donating to Hillary Clinton and the black genocide factories of Planned Parenthood, in between sexually assaulting each other. Well, we must press home this advantage. We must make new films and break the leftist control of the entertainment industry. We must do all of the things that the speakers and attendees of this wonderful weekend have been sharing with you that we should do. I will share with this audience the same thing I tell young people. We're in this together and we have to stick together. We can only win together. Because they own everything, they control everything. So if you want to win, you have to stick up for each other. The next generation of firebrands and heroes, imbued with the spirit of Breitbart, Bannon, and all of the others that you love, are looking at the frauds and activists of the press squarely in the face and saying, "Bitch, please. You are in no position to pass judgment on us. We don't owe these bastards anything, and we will no longer cower in terror at the threat of name-calling or reputational damage, or having our family-friendly names besmirched in some way. We will run headlong into the fire and emerge stronger than before. We will be Daenerys Targaryen. We won't just come out unscathed, we'll come out unscathed with fucking dragons." And when we are betrayed by our own side, when we are squished by bush botherers, the self-serving, swampy establishment politicians, the journalists terrified of striking a blow for freedom lest they lose their cocktail party invitations, we will treat them with the same contempt with which we treat the left, because they deserve, if anything, more opprobrium and more of our hatred, more of our contempt. If we fix our schools, if we fix our culture, there is still hope for America, but this is a window that we must lurch through it, must hurl ourselves through this window. Because if we beat them now, we beat them. Political correctness and social justice are at the apex of their powers. They have never been more powerful. They have never controlled more of the institutions of civil society than they do today. They control the academy, they control the media, they control the entertainment industry, they control large branches of government, they control almost everything you see around you. So if we beat them now, we beat them. If we beat them at the height of their powers, they will never, ever come back. This is the battlefield I have chosen to fight on, and I hope that you will join us in it. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.